Chris Pratt, the voice of Mario in the upcoming Super Mario Bros. Movie, has teased the sequel and a very intense post-credit scene. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Cosmic Culture, the channel where we talk all things major movie and television news, theories, breakdowns, and much, much more. I'm your host, Chris, and today we're diving back into the Nintendo Cinematic Universe. Yes, I'm already calling it. I'm calling my shot from here. I think we should all very much be expecting a cinematic universe with multiple threads, movies, TV shows, and maybe even video games that will also interact into this cinematic world. Potentially all leading up to a very exciting cinematic ending, which would be a replication of Super Smash Bros. If you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning on that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our other daily uploads. You can also follow me on my other socials, Instagram at Chris M. Rosser, and Twitter at TheCultureChris. Links to both of those can be found in the description down below. So we'll start today's video with Chris Pratt's quote. This is what Mario had to say. Listen, there's at the end of the film, there's a post-credit sequence that gives you a taste of what the sequel could be about. And that gets me very excited. But there's been talk of Luigi's Mansion. That was a GameCube game. I think that would be great. Now, this is very forward. There's not much needing to dive into what his words meant. He gave us the information that he had as the actor, the lead character of this franchise, as we're starting off with the first Super Mario Bros. Movie. He told us simply, there's a post-credit scene, and it seems to me like it might be pushing towards Luigi's Mansion, and that's going to be great. You know, that's a story that people will be familiar with, that people will be able to relate with, and these characters are already very easy to relate to several different generations. This is a old school video game at this point in our own history, and there are large generations of people that grew up playing Mario, and some newer generations of people that have grown up playing Mario. So as long as the movie doesn't suck, like absolutely and completely bad writing, corny, cheesy, in all of the wrong ways and not the good ways, you have the audience and the fan base that are already there to enjoy what this movie is trying to give us. We've seen very similar ideas of nostalgia being used in the right way with Sonic the Hedgehog. That first and second movie, in my opinion, were exactly what they needed to be. No more and no less. They had really good, funny, cheesy jokes. They had amazing Easter eggs, sound inclusions. The story was all it needed to be, and the second one carried up just the same, teasing the future of that franchise. Now, we also know that that's going to grow into a cinematic universe. We have a Knuckles series that is planning to go out on Paramount Plus, and we have a third movie that was heavily teased at the end of the second. Now let's go back to Mario. This is the beginning, and it already looks like they're going to be starting off very strong. They got an incredible cast to voice the characters, and although there's been much debate about whether or not Chris Pratt was the right choice for Mario, I think it's ultimately going to end up being perfect. And for those of you, in particular, at this moment, who have said it's not the original voice, it doesn't sound right, all I would have to say back to you is, even with as much as I love Mario, I could not listen to the original Mario voice for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And that's something to keep in mind. In the video games, he speaks in very short sentences and sometimes says one word. Let's go in a Chris Pratt Mario version is going to be a lot more fun to listen to throughout full paragraphs and dialogue than the actual Mario squeaky voice. It just doesn't make as much sense, and it couldn't be taken as seriously. So I completely understand the artistic change to the overall voice of Mario in this series. And that's going to go with most of the characters. Even Toad doesn't sound like as rough and coarse and squeaky. So we're trying to build a successful franchise, and that does require making it work for the cinema, where in a video game we hear them say a word or two, maybe a sentence, but when you're listening to full dialogue, it needs to be toned down a little bit so that people can actually enjoy it. With that being said, look towards the future, because I can guarantee a sequel will be on its way unless this movie absolutely tanks, and I'm pretty excited for it. It's actually pretty high up on my 2023 movie release lists of movies I'm most excited for, and I feel that might be the same with many of you. Feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. That could be my main question. Is this something you're actually and actively excited to watch? Because I am. And I think a lot of people will be, and that will ultimately do well for the forthcoming sequel. and the cinematic universe that they will be creating. They can very easily do spin-off series for specific characters. Go into the story of Bowser, show how he became a villain. Go into the story of Princess Peach and do some heritage stories. How did she become Princess Peach? Tell us the stories of these characters who we know and love, and yes, there is lore for them to take from, but create your own story too. And ultimately, as they maybe continue to do other characters, Link, for instance, characters that you might have seen in Super Smash Bros., maybe there's room to ultimately bring in some type of arena, almost even, dare I say it, multiverse-style film at the end, which would pretty much replicate the idea of Secret Wars, but it would be its own thing in the sense that Mario Bros. Super Smash Brawl is an incredibly well-known and loved game, and to create that in cinema would be an absolute ride. Many of you may or may not know this, but there is actually a story mode to Super Smash Bros. If you ever just went over to a friend's house and played this game, and he was the one that owned it, and all you did was jump in with buddies and smash buttons, you might have really enjoyed playing the game, but not appreciated that there are stories and lore and an overall idea of a movie that can be created. Because although a very fun game, watching a bunch of characters just fight with no purpose and no story wouldn't really be that much fun, and forcing the issue could cause poor writing. But there is precedent and there is story that can be taken and created into a big multiversal, we'll call it, for the sake of the video game world, Nintendo storyline, and could ultimately be extremely entertaining as well. So I am excited. And yeah, it's a little geeky, it's video games, it's animation, but I'm really stoked for the way that they have presented this to this point. Chris Pratt has gone behind it, Anna Taylor-Joy has gone behind it, Jack Black, and many others who I'm excited to hear in their roles in the Super Mario Bros. World. But from the mouth of Chris Pratt himself, there is a post-credit scene. It's probably leaning towards the Luigi Mansion storyline, which means we might get a Mario sequel later on, and we might get a Luigi spin-off Mario story as well, and it might start to branch off, kind of like what you see in the Avengers, and then they'll bring it back in for a team-up movie, and I would be perfectly okay with that. That's something I would love to see. There's also a full possibility that Chris Pratt's playing a little coy, and he says, yeah, there's one post-credit scene, and maybe they've gone full Marvel, and there are two post-credit scenes, one teasing a Mario sequel, and one teasing a Luigi spin-off. Either way, I can't wait for this movie to come out. I'm going to have a lot of fun. Let me know, is this something you're hopefully waiting for? Is it something that you'll see what happens when it comes out? And would you expect to see a Mario Super World collaborative cinematic universe? There's the words. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, thank you to everybody who watched to the very end of the video. If you found it helpful, useful, or entertaining, consider subscribing and turning on that notification bell. And I'll be sure to catch all of you guys in the next one right here on Cosmic Culture.